Coming up on 5 Minute News. Biden says US should have societal guilt 10 years after Sandy Hook. Facebook in lawsuit over posts inciting Tigray war. And Fed raises rates by 0.5 point, with more rises to come. It's Thursday, December 15. I'm Anthony Davis. President Joe Biden has said the US should have societal guilt over taking too long to address gun violence and the curse of school shootings. The president's statement comes 10 years after the Sandy Hook elementary school shooting, in which 20 young children and 6 adults were killed in Newton, Connecticut. Biden was then vice president to Barack Obama. On Wednesday, he said our nation watched as the unthinkable happened. 20 young children with their whole lives ahead of them, 6 educators who gave their lives protecting their students, and countless survivors who still carry the wounds of that day. Biden heralded progress made on gun policy reform this year after the shooting of 19 children and 2 adults at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas in May. In June, Biden signed the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the first major gun safety bill in nearly 30 years. Among other initiatives, the legislation expanded background checks for the youngest gun buyers and invested in mental health and violence intervention programs. But Biden acknowledged that more must be done, reiterating his commitment to signing an assault weapons ban, although that proposal has stalled in the Senate. Meanwhile, survivors of last month's deadly mass shooting at a Colorado gay nightclub testified on Wednesday to Congress about the onslaught of threats and violence against members of the LGBTQ community as they urged lawmakers to pass a law banning some semi-automatic weapons. There are almost no mass shootings or school shootings outside of the United States. Meta has been accused in a lawsuit of letting posts that inflamed the war in Tigray flourish on Facebook after an investigation in February revealed repeated inaction on posts that incited violence. The lawsuit, filed in the High Court of Kenya, where Meta's sub-Saharan African operations are based, alleges that Facebook's recommendation systems amplified hateful and violent posts in the context of the war in northern Ethiopia, which raged for 2 years until a ceasefire was agreed in early November. The lawsuit seeks the creation of a $1.6 billion fund for victims of hate speech. One of the petitioners said his father, an Ethiopian academic, was targeted with racist messages before his murder in November 2021, and that Facebook did not remove the posts despite complaints. In February, an analysis by the Bureau of Investigative Journalism found that Facebook was letting users post content inciting violence through hate and misinformation, despite being aware that it helped directly fuel tensions in Tigray, where thousands have died and millions have been displaced since war broke out in late 2020. Facebook has repeatedly come under fire for expanding into countries with low media literacy, rapidly growing to encompass a large fraction of internet traffic in the area, and failing to devote sufficient resources to moderation in the local languages. That describes its role in Myanmar, where the site faces compensation claims after legal action was launched in the UK and the US last December. The Federal Reserve reinforced its inflation fight on Wednesday by raising its key interest rate for the 7th time this year and signaling more hikes to come. But it announced a smaller hike than it had in its past 4 meetings at a time when inflation is showing signs of easing. The Fed made clear in a statement and a news conference by Chair Jerome Powell that it thinks sharply higher rates are still needed to fully tame the worst inflation bout to strike the economy in 4 decades. The central bank boosted its benchmark rate 0.5 point to a range of 4.25 to 4.5%, its highest level in 15 years. Though lower than its previous 3/4 point hikes, the latest move will further increase the costs of many consumer and business loans and the risk of a recession. More surprisingly, the policymakers forecast that their short-term rate will reach a range of 5 to 5.25% by the end of 2023. That suggests that the Fed is poised to raise its rate by an additional 0.75 of a point and leave it there through next year. The latest rate hike was announced one day after an encouraging report showed that inflation in the United States slowed in November for a fifth straight month. You can subscribe to 5-Minute News on YouTube with your preferred podcast app. Ask your smart speaker or enable 5-Minute News as your Amazon Alexa flash briefing skill. Subscribe, rate and review online at 5minute.news. 5-Minute News is an Evergreen podcast covering politics, inequality, health and climate, delivering independent, unbiased and essential world news daily.